I shared, I'm Melissa Skiffin with the ARC of Greater Pittsburgh under the Achieva family of organizations. I have a son who is almost 15 years old, which is hard to believe. Kiefer has an intellectual disability and autism, and about 10 years ago, we were getting ready for the transition to kindergarten. One of the reasons that we're doing this presentation this evening is that I personally had a lot of anxiety around the transition to kindergarten. I've learned that many other families have felt the same way. Part of my anxiety was around not really knowing what the process was, not knowing what was coming next. When I talked to Jane about this webinar, she was happy to include information to kind of walk us down the pathway of what that looks like. And if that's something you're anxious about, then maybe that will help you feel a little bit more comfortable too. So like I said, I am in the Advocacy and Family Support Department. We are the ARC of Greater Pittsburgh. The ARC of Erie is also under the Advocacy and Family Support Department. We offer free technical assistance to people with disabilities, their families, the community at large. We also engage in systemic advocacy issues that impact children and adults with disabilities. And this is our geographic reach. We currently work in Beaver, Allegheny, Westmoreland, and Erie County. But as you can see from the map, Achieva supports people in almost every county in Pennsylvania. I was really excited to see the registrations this evening. We had 13 counties in Pennsylvania registered. So it was really exciting to see the reach from Western Pennsylvania the whole way to Philadelphia on the eastern side of the state. So it was exciting to see all of that. And then Achieva's mission and vision: Achieva advocates with, empowers, and supports people with disabilities and their families throughout their lives. And Achieva envisions a community where all people with disabilities lead lives of personal significance. A little off topic, but Achieva is turning 75 this year. We have been around a long time supporting with people with disabilities through the lifespan. So watch out for some up and coming things relating to our 75th anniversary. And these are just our core values: respect, passion, ethics, change, and team. And then if you wanted to reach out to Achieva Advocacy, you can complete our online intake form. That's our website. And then you can also scan the QR code and find us that way too. Okay. And let me see if there was anything else I wanted to. While I'm switching over to the slides, I just wanted to remind everyone that we are recording. General questions are fantastic. Conversation is encouraged, but I ask that you not share too much private information about yourself or your child as we are recording. We can always set something up off the webinar to connect to go over more specific details relating to your child. So let me switch screens. All right. All right. Can everyone see that slide? Jane says we're good. Someone tell me if yes, Lily. Oh, I got thumbs up. I got hands right. We're doing good. All right. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Jane from the PEAL Center. Again, thank you, Jane, for being here. You did not even hesitate when I asked you to do this, and I'm so grateful. Are you still able to control your slides?
Let me give it a shot.
Give it a shot. Let's see. If not, I'll do it.
That is no.
Okay. I will do it for you. That's not a problem.
Not a problem.
So while you're introing, I'll go ahead and get our little Slido ready. So
okay,
take it
perfect.
away.
All righty. Hi, everybody. Welcome again. I'm going to echo what Melissa said. Thanks for joining us on a Thursday night. You know, it's as parents, it's always hard to give up some time, even in the evening. So thank you again for being here. I am Jane Stadnik. I am a family resource specialist here over at the PEAL Center. So that's the Parent Education and Advocacy Leadership Center. We are the Parent and Training and Information Center for the state of Pennsylvania. So each state has at least one of what we are. We are currently funded through the Office of Special Education Programs to help families navigate the special education and healthcare system. Along with our friends over at Achieva, we help support and train families to be their child's best advocate. I am a mom of 4. My youngest son, who is now an adult, so if he heard me say like little, he would tell me all about it. But he is 24. He has an intellectual disability and autism, and so we have run the gamut from early intervention on up to adulthood and everything that comes with it. So anytime you call over here at the PEAL Center, you're connecting either with a parent or a person with a disability with lived experience. Okay, Melissa, we can get started and just, again, this is the stuff Melissa just talked about. You can flip to our mission statement. One of the things I always like to point out is just the talking about leading rich, active lives as full members of our schools and communities. You'll hear me talk a lot about the importance of community and school and family throughout this slide. Okay, Melissa. Okay, these are just a kind of run-of-the-mill objectives for tonight. Just again, talking about that transition from preschool early intervention into kindergarten, understand the options for an IEP, just the importance of, as a parent, being an informed decision maker, and what like determining like what inclusion can look like, and again, if you have any questions or anything that pertain directly to your child, you can either reach out to Melissa and I. Our information, again, will be at the end of the slide. Or you can just pop in and say, hey, I need your email address. Okay. Melissa helped put these Slido things together. She was like, have you ever done Slido? And I'm like, no, I have not. So I am also going to participate, Melissa.
Awesome. Well, it was fun to play with, and I think I'll be using this in future slides too, presentations. So let's give it a shot. And I'm going to switch my screen that I'm sharing. Okay, so this is an active poll. We wanted to hear from all of you. I am not a huge fan of presentations where people just talk at you for an hour and a half. And we want to make sure that we're understanding where you're all coming from. So the first question, and you can scan the QR code, you can go to slido.com and enter the pin at the bottom. But this is in real time. Your answers will pop up. We wanted to hear from you. What are you most excited about? I should also say that it's anonymous. Nobody else is going to know what you posted. Yeah. What are you most excited about for your students' transition to kindergarten? And Jane,
what in one word, right? We have to use one word. Okay, so one word to sum it up.
One word or just a few words.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to try it too because I want to make sure that I want to see if it works. And you can do more than one too.
Loading up.
I think so. I hit send. Well, Jane, this worked the other day when we did it. Why is it not working now? New classroom. Thank you for using the chat. Sorry, my Slido is not working. I don't know why. Hold on. We're going to see if we can figure this out. Poll settings. Multiple answers. Character limit close. All right. Well, let's try this again. Let me try again. Because I can see.
Can you see him on that side?
I can. It's not sharing on this side. Well, let me just read what we have on my side, and then we'll try the other question. On this side, I can see here. Actually, let me just share my screen. Let's do that. It'll be okay. There we go. So we do. We have learning, social expansion, being able to have more socialization, friendships, new friends, community, journey, change, and growth. So what's cool about this word puzzle that it's building is that the bigger and bolder the words are means the more people that are entering the same thing. So more than one person said new friends and more than one person said community. So I think that's pretty cool.
I do too.
All right, let me stop sharing. And I'm going to end this one. Okay, let's see. What's this one? Let's go to this one. See if this one works. All right, voting should be open.
We can't see it currently.
Okay, let me go ahead and share my screen and see if we can get this one to work. Should be coming up now. All right, let's try this one. What part of the transition to kindergarten are you most concerned about? And I probably would have needed more than just a few words because I was worried about everything.
It's got the poll locked. We did
Slido
so
is
good
not,
with this
we
the other day.
did. Slido was not my friend tonight. I apologize, everyone. We practiced and we practiced,
what?
but you know what?
Use the chat.
It is what it is. You can use the chat.
Yeah. It's not anonymous, but we could use the chat.
Yep. Let's see.
I was
Still say voting closed. Let's see. Close voting. Open voting. Start poll. Present.
Yep, needs being met.
I think we might be good now.
Okay, we can try it.
Let's try it. Classroom placement, another fight with the district. Yep.
And it's working.
Supports. It is working. I apologize for my mess up with the first one. Needs not being met. Yep. The unknown. Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely. I'm most nervous about them trying to place him outside of the elementary school and how they handle his eloping. Inclusive practices, appropriate supports. I'm hearing a lot of resounding themes. Not enough support, needs not being met, appropriate supports. Yes. Fighting the school district. Yes. Yes. I can tell you, like I said, Kiefer is 15. He's in 8th grade. He'll be going to 9th grade next year. I can tell you two things. One, I can tell you that I was worried about every single thing that all of you are listing. Every single one of them I was worried about. And I can also tell you that now that we have transitioned to kindergarten, to the second half of elementary school, which involved changing classes, to middle school, and now we're on the cusp of the high school transition, it gets easier. It does. It gets easier. I feel more prepared now. I feel more supported. I feel like I know what I'm doing. And I feel like if I don't know what I'm doing, then I know where to go to find out who to get help from. So we're kind of all in this together for sure.
I think that that's the key, Melissa, what you said too, is you don't have to know everything, right? We always, that common saying, you don't know what you don't know.
Yes.
But it's nice to know where to go.
Yes.
When you need that kind of support.
Yes.
I will tell you, I took as many trainings as I could possibly get.
Me too.
A little background is I spent 21 years in an early childhood classroom. So my first love was early childhood education. And so I was actually on the other side of some of this. and it was, you know, the perspective is so much different as a parent than, you know, when you're on the other side as a teacher. But knowing where to go for help is always the best key. You don't have to know it all. You're always going to be learning. We're not
Yes,
always going to know it all. Yep.
absolutely.
Okay. We can use the chat for this one. So, how familiar are you or your student with their new school? My kiddo had not been in his school except for um, they had like I always call it kindergarten boot camp. But it was like, you know, an introduction to kindergarten. I don't know if they'd like for me to refer it as boot camp, but that's kind of what, you know, where they go through the bus and that kind of thing. And he at the time had a therapeutic support staff that actually attended with him. I know that's a little bit unheard of these days, but you know, back then there was a little more of that one-to-one support that he had.
Yeah, we were familiar with the playground, and which is important, but that was pretty much about it. And I wasn't really familiar with the teachers, and I was really unfamiliar to the school itself, other than the playground, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
So like I didn't know what door to drop him off at, or what door but you know what I mean? I didn't know the things. I didn't know the things.
Yep.
Christopher says child doesn't know the school, but the school knows us.
I chuckled a little bit with that. That was kind of us too.
No wrong door, right?
Yep.
Jamie says, I took my daughter with me to vote once. Jessica says, my daughter went to the school district, but not kindergarten, and she attended the other elementary school. Got it. I didn't also know off right at first during the beginning of the transition process that our kindergarten program was a half a day. So that was interesting news.
Yep. That would have been interesting to know ahead of time.
Surprise.
Yep. So the next question on this is really just a question to really think about as we go through talking about the transition to kindergarten. It's like thinking about your student at the new school, what areas you think that they may need help with. Because what we're trying to create when we talk about creating your child's education plan is starting from the very beginning of the day, going all the way to the end of the day.
Yep.
So I thought I had it pretty well under control, but I didn't think about when my kid gets off the bus, right? Because he'd been getting off the bus. He went to a typical preschool program part of the day, and then a specialized preschool the other half of the day. And so he took a bus, and he knew exactly what to do when they let off the bus at his preschool. You know, he rolled right in. The one of the teachers was standing there. That was not the case for kindergarten. When he rolled into kindergarten, got off the bus, followed everybody in, but he did not respond when anybody called his name because he never did. So he was in the hallway and everybody else had left. And the nurse who we knew because our daughter played softball with her daughter came and found him and took him right to his room. But it was something that I didn't think about, right? It was something that I didn't tell my IEP team. I mean, no one really thought about it. I just kind of figured he'd get off the bus with the crew and I don't know, it would work itself out. So when we go through this, think about where your child need to be met, right? We can call those parental concerns, bullet point them, check them off, because it's a good thing for the team to think about it from the beginning of school till the end of the school, whether that's busing, whether that's lunch, whether what that looks like on recess, what that looks like with elopement. I've got a story about that later on too. We kind of ran the gamut of things that could go wrong. when kindergarten.
Yeah.
But okay, we can go on to the next one. Okay, we're going to just start with the basics. We're going to talk about the systems, just prepping for the transition and talking about how to ensure that our child is included. Okay, so first we're going to talk about if your child's already in early intervention, you probably know a little bit about the eligibility. So preschool EI eligibility is a developmental delay or specific diagnosis as described by PA regulations and is in need of specially designed instruction. And the reason we're pointing this out because it looks a little different as we transition into our K-12 system. Here are the 13 disability categories under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, IDEA. Again, if I say an acronym and you don't know what it is, somebody stop me. I'm usually pretty good, but sometimes I get caught up. So these are the 13 categories that can qualify your child for special education services along with another piece. So if you don't see your child's specific diagnosis on here, oftentimes it falls into other health impairment. So if you're looking at ADHD, things like that, then that's where they would, that's how they would qualify. Okay. And here's where I talk about the school age eligibility. So when we talked about early intervention eligibility, it was developmental delay was one of the ways you could qualify. You needed either one of the 13 disability categories or developmental delay, and then you need to be in need of specially designed instruction, meaning the school has to change the way they produce the instruction for your child. Maybe different curriculums, maybe a different mode of teaching. So need the specially designed instruction and one of the 13 disability categories. But under school age, developmental delay doesn't qualify. It did for a short time during COVID, right? Because we couldn't get evaluations, or it was very difficult to get an evaluation for a child to start kindergarten that had under developmental delay. You can go to the next one. Again, so here's the evaluation section. Again, slightly different. Initial evaluation, both preschool EI and school age are both 60 calendar days of the date that the parent permission is received. Under early intervention, a student is reevaluated every 2 years. Under the school age special education, every 3 years, or if the student has an intellectual disability, reevaluated every 2 years. So complete every 3 years, unless there's an intellectual disability, and then it's every 2 years. But what I did want to talk about here was just that when you're talking about an evaluation, each evaluation does not necessarily have to contain new assessments. Sometimes evaluations are just a review of records. What determines the need for new evaluations is an IEP team decision, which you are included in that IEP team. You're a predominant part of that of your child's IEP team. So when we're looking at doing evaluations, they'll review all of the records first, and that should also include you. So you should get a kind of a pre-report, like here's what we found. We think that we may need to do some new assessments, and then you can sign off on new assessments. Okay, next. Just a breakdown of some of the other differences. School calendars, 180 days for school-aged children. And there's a possibility or consideration for what we call extended school year, or the acronym of ESY. The entry age is decided by the school district. You must be enrolled by the age of 6. In some way, shape, or form, wherever you're going. And of course, for early intervention, when you transition from the 0 to 3 system into the 3 to 5. Children may enter by their 3rd birthday. So my son actually did not receive a birth to 3. He was it was a little bit longer process 20 plus years ago. So he had turned 3 already. The early intervention is 12-month programming with breaks no longer than 3 weeks. So child should be predominantly going all year round. Next. Okay, so the early intervention entity, so whoever you're using for early intervention should be sending you a notice a year in advance about your need to transition to your district program or charter school, and schedule a transition meeting by the end of February to select school placement. And what I mean by placement is not like if your kid's going to go to a special school, or it's just about, are you going to go to kindergarten at your home school district? Are you going to go to a charter or a cyber charter? So I just wanted to pull that out, that's not what I meant by placement. And this is kind of what, one of the things when I talk about preparing for kindergarten, this is kind of key. So as your child turns 4, you have the preschool IEP. That should really look like, what are the skills that we need to build to go to kindergarten, right? We should be getting ready. That's what that year in advance is looking at, right? We are getting ready. We are setting up our children for success. Okay. So in the chat, has everyone received your notice for your transition meeting? They should all be coming up.
It's so funny that you bring this up, even though I know that you were going to bring this up, because I was thinking about this the other day. I can remember, oh gosh, it's funny the things that you think about. I can remember way back when, like, I knew it was going to be coming. And I was like checking the mail every day. Is it here? Is it here? Is it here? It's funny the things you think of. I should also say that while I was a nervous Nelly about the whole darn thing, my kid, on the other hand, was not. He was well prepared. He transitioned to kindergarten without a hiccup and was happy to go. And it was me that struggled more than he did. So it's funny the things that you think back on.
Yeah, we can't write that IEP for you, but I'm just,
Yes. Yes.
I needed that too. Yes, it is group.
Yes,
so that's one of the things that we often, it's not an individualized, it's not always an individual meeting. So typically our transition to kindergarten meetings in February are group, and they're really just giving kind of the broad version of what needs to happen. You can then schedule to meet with your child's new IEP team, but we'll get into a couple of those things as we get later on in the slide deck.
Yeah, because the first one can be group, but then it kind of, after that, it goes out into individual.
Yeah.
More.
Interestingly enough, we made the mistake of moving.
Sorry, I didn't mean to get.
Yeah. So 3 miles down the road, but it was a different county, and it should have been, it could have been a different world. So we kind of missed out on some of these things, and it was a little rushed towards the end.
Sure.
Okay, if you want to go on to the next one. Okay, so the options for your child's transition. And this is where I want families to be vigilant, because sometimes this is where the ball gets dropped, right? When I get a phone call in from a family going, my kid no longer has an IEP. Okay. So a child remains eligible for school-age special education if they are eligible for special education in preschool early intervention and registered for their school district or charter school. All right. End of story. If your kid has a preschool IEP at age 4.5, right, as we're transitioning into kindergarten, and is already registered with their school district or charter, the child remains eligible for school age special education. The only way that doesn't happen is if there is a reevaluation that is completed and determined that the child is no longer eligible for special education, either by the school district charter or the preschool early intervention program. So sometimes I see that kids are have met their goals in their preschool IEP, their preschool individual education plan, have had a reevaluation and have been exited from special education. And then when we get in kindergarten, the world looks a little different, right? And then the school district then probably says, hey, we might need to do an evaluation. But your child's current eligibility for special education stays, and the only way it doesn't is if they've been reevaluated to determine that they're not eligible any longer. Okay. So there are 3 options when you collaborate with your school district, right? So we adopt a preschool IEP evaluation report, we adopt the IEP evaluation report with revisions, or the school district and the IEP team conduct a reevaluation. We can go a little bit more in depth the next slide. So I see this one a lot, right? The IEP team, this is the individual education plan for your child. That in the team includes you, special education teacher, a general education teacher, the school LEA, which is local education agency. It is I always call it the budget person, the person that can spend the money on the resources that you need, right? They can say, okay, the school district can spend the money. So that's typically school principal, psychologist, assistant principal. So those are typically the people that you see as local education agencies. Listed on your child's IEP, it will say LEA. And so oftentimes we see them adopt the preschool evaluation report along with the IEP. And once the team decision is made, the school district issues the NOREP, which is the Notice of Recommended Educational Placement. And that's what provides the family with the opportunity to disagree with the placement recommendation. So going back to the placement issue, what has to happen first is they have to accept the evaluation that's already in place. They have to, as a team, you all have to go through, make sure the IEP is what needs to happen before anybody can talk about placement. So the school can't just go, oh, we have a kindergarten life skills class. That's where your child's going to go. That's not how that works. Okay. As a team, placement is always a team decision and is only done after review of the IEP. Okay. So that was where if the district would say, well, this is where your child's going to go, they're going to issue you a notice of recommended educational placement, and you get to agree or disagree with that. Okay, number 2.
Jane, can I say one thing real quick about the NOREP? You have 10 days on the NOREP to agree or disagree. So if you don't do anything, because I do sometimes get calls where no decision was made and it was turned in, whatever the recommendation is on the NOREP will go into effect. So pay attention to the 10 days. There's a question in the chat. What happens if I disagree?
Yep. So what happens if you disagree? So on the notice of recommended educational placement, there is a checkbox for mediation, informal meeting, and due process. So those are your procedural safeguards. Your parental right is on that NOREP. And we can go in and I can drop in some resources for that too. Because in order for it to what we call stay put, right? So to stay the same as the placement in the preschool IEP, you would either have to check mediation or due process, so it doesn't change. Again, if you need more information on that, I can probably drop the link in there for more information, or you can call Melissa or I and reach out, and we can give you the more information on that if you would have to disagree on your notice of recommended educational placement.
Jane, while you're doing the next slide, I can drop the website in for ODR.
Yep, that's perfect. Okay, so number 2. So adopt the EI, the early intervention IEP with revisions. I see this a lot, and this is the one that I chose when we went into kindergarten. I felt that my child was still working on some of the goals that were in his preschool IEP that he had not mastered yet. And this is, and another reason that I picked this one was because I wanted to really have an in-depth meeting with his new school, to discuss what revisions he may need in kindergarten. Because kindergarten looked a lot different than preschool. He was at a play-based preschool, so it looked a lot different at kindergarten. Like sitting at a desk was not our jam. So as denotes, I probably still have the letter around that Jacob did most of his work under his desk today. And I was like, well, did he do his work? Because I was like, that's a bonus. Bonus. Okay, for the next one, number 3. So the IEP team can determine that a reevaluation is necessary, and the school district notifies the parent in writing that a reevaluation will be conducted. The notification must occur within a reasonable amount of time after the parent completes the intent to register form. So you don't have to be registered for your school district to get an evaluation. We like to have the intent to register form because your child will be starting kindergarten somewhere. And again, we can go back to where the reevaluation begins with a review of existing data. So they will take all of the data from your child's preschool IEP and maybe even from your IFSP and review that before they look at new assessments to do. So the school can decide that, or the parent may request a reevaluation done before kindergarten starts. So if you do that, so say you're like, I'm looking at my child's 3 to 5 preschool IEP, and I'm not quite sure that this is going to fit. If your child has a developmental delay, remember that does not qualify under a school age IEP. Oftentimes when we see developmental delay, we see a speech delay to go along with it. So oftentimes a child will get an IEP based on speech only. But if you feel that your child needs more and your child is under developmental delay, you can request that the school district do a special education evaluation. I would have that started by no later than April, right? So end of March, April, you're going to make that decision, make it then, right? Because you go back to the district has 60 days and school's often done by June 6th. You want to have a conversation before you start this new school year. However, if the evaluation is not complete before the new school year, the preschool IEP travels into the beginning of kindergarten. So the IEP is still there, right? It is just not the one based on a new evaluation yet. Okay. Anything else on that, Melissa? Did I miss anything?
Nope. I don't think so. Nope.
Okay.
And we actually, this is the option that we did. Kiefer's preschool reevaluation was a little bit old. Mm-hmm. And just to come in with like fresh data, everyone agreed that we just to do the reevaluation. So it worked out. I was glad we did it that way. Oh, Jamie said I already requested an evaluation. Great job.
There you go. Good job, Jamie.
Fantastic. Gotta love it when those requests come in January. But yeah, we went this route. Like I said, it wasn't that his IEP wasn't supporting him, because it was just, with so much changing going from where he was in preschool to kindergarten, we just opted for this. And yeah, but the only other thing I wanted to say is there's no wrong decision.
No.
And I say that a lot about special education. Hindsight is 2020. You can't look back 5 years and say, wish I coulda, shoulda, woulda. Making the, you just, as parents, we and family members, we make the best decisions we can with the information we have at the time. So there's no wrong path. There's no wrong way to do this, which was also one of my fears, was that I was going to make a wrong choice. And right. Yes, there is no wrong choices.
No, there's only now choices.
There's only now choices. Yeah.
That's it. That's what I always say. There's only now choices, right? There's no back choices. There's now choices.
Absolutely.
Okay, we can go a little bit. We're going to talk a little bit more about the reevaluation report. Again, we talked about a review of data, if they need new assessments, if the child is found eligible for school-age special education, the school district will convene an IEP meeting within 30 calendar days of the date of the report. So when Jamie gets her report back, the district has 30 days to have an IEP meeting. That does not include summer. Okay, so if you don't get it back till, well, if you got it now, you should definitely have it back and the meeting before June. All should fall into place. This assures a smooth transition, right, between the school age programs. So after that meeting, the IEP team, and remember, including you, parents, guardians, caregivers, a new IEP will develop and the notice of recommended educational placement will be issued. Okay, which should be no shocker to you as a parent on what that NORAP says, right? Is you guys should have had that discussion at the meeting. One of the things that I often tell parents is you're part of the team, so you should not just be talked at, right? So I listen to ideas, but you should be part of the conversation at all times. Okay. Transition strategies. This is exactly what I meant, right? It's your voice that guides your child. You're your child's first and best advocate. We talk about that all the time. People call me, or someone says, "Oh, I hired an advocate," and I'm like, in the end, you're always going to be your child's best advocate. And oftentimes, I personally had a situation before I came here to work at PEAL. I had a situation where I needed some advocacy help, and the advocate and I saw two different ways. I was ill prepared for that. So again, it just made me realize as a parent, I needed to understand how to help my child. And there's not always an advocate available. That's the other thing. It's everybody's like, go get an advocate. And I'm like, well, okay, but there's not always somebody there, or the timing just doesn't work out. You have the best knowledge of your child all the time. So just this talks about collaborating, again, with your early intervention and preschool staff to create a transition plan. So not only if your child is attending a preschool program, your child's teacher in the preschool program is a wealth of knowledge when it comes to transitioning to kindergarten. So I always say, even if it's a half hour to get your preschool teacher and your early intervention team together to talk about how to create this transition plan, regardless of whether she can sit in on a meeting with you guys or if she just puts in some input. or makes a phone call to you or you have a discussion, it is a really great way to plan for transition. Yeah, I do have a template for a child portfolio, Jessica. The schedule visiting days, so your child can become familiarized and to help identify needs for support. Um, like, so if you've never been in the school, make sure you go look at it, right? It's really hard to know what your child's going to need if you've never been inside the school, right? Like, you know, if I would have visited ahead of time, I probably would have had a little bit of thought process on an elopement issue, as my child's kindergarten classroom was directly in front of the door and giant window for the playground. We probably would have had the school supplied him an aide because of his elopement. At least somebody to stand guard at the door. I joke about that, but really, he really just wanted to be on the playground a lot. But we didn't know that right away. And his aide that the school had with him was a retired special education teacher who may have not been able to run as fast as my 6-year-old. So, you know, it took it took a lot of time to support that. We worked really hard on the elopement piece. Again, education comes, reading comes, math comes. Um, you know, I needed him not to leave the building and head for the playground, even though, like, you know, again, luckily it was a fenced in thing, but he never actually got out the door. But it was something that, as an IEP team, we had to come up with a lot of strategies that changed throughout kindergarten into first grade. Finally, a stop sign on the door is what worked. Anyway, no alarm system, no bell on the door, just a good old paper stop sign on the outside door. Um, uh, so, you know, just familiarize yourself with the building. I would say walk the path with your child to the kindergarten room. Introduce him to maybe the nurse, because nurses are great people. They're like not teachers. They're not necessarily authority figures. Kid likes a nurse. And, you know, again, out to the playground, you know where it is. Create a portfolio of your child to share with your child's teachers. It doesn't have to be fancy. I used like a one pager when my son went into kindergarten, which just had a picture of him, what he liked to do, what he didn't like to do, what motivated him, you know, and what it looked like when he was getting anxious or needed a break. But we can talk about that on the couple next slides over. Next slide over. Yep. So we have an example of what someone put together. Again, it does not need to be this fancy. All right. This is obviously this mom is super talented. Again, remember mine was a one pager that went out via email. I'm much better at that now, but that's where it went. Do we want to watch this, Melissa, or do we want to come back to it? We have time.
We can watch it if you want. Give me a second to queue it up.
Yeah, I think it would be nice just to
Sure. Hold on one
to
sec.
see it.
Let me switch here. It's funny that you I didn't know to do this at first. It's a great idea. We've been doing it the last few years, probably since like mid elementary school, I would say. Now that Kiefer's older, he does his own. Which is fun, and sometimes he chooses to type it, sometimes it's printing out pictures, and you know, however he feels like doing it at the moment. But it's super cool to see kind of that change from me leading that and me talking about what works for him and doesn't work for him, and then him kind of taking the reins and getting the opportunity to tell people what he likes and doesn't like. So let me see if I can get this to play. If not, I'll just scroll down.
Yeah, we might not get it to play. I don't know.
That's
but
okay.
we can
But I can
sit
scroll through
through.
it. Yep.
Yeah.
Can you see it okay?
Yep.
Perfect. This is a really fancy one. I dig it.
It is. It is.
Just a girl.
And I actually know Mia, so
Oh,
she's pretty fabulous. She's a teenager now. She's fabulous.
These
fabulous.
kids, they just keep growing up. I don't understand it.
I know. It's really hard. It's really hard.
It is. It was really cool. One of the things when Kiefer, because like I said, kindergarten for us was half a year, or half a day. But when he went into first grade, that's when the specials kind of started with library and gym and music for a lot of students. That happens in kindergarten if it's all day. But I found out that the Kiefer loved Pete the Cat books, and our library at his elementary school had a whole darn section of Pete the Cat books, and it was like one of his favorite moments of the day.
See this, so she put this in it was in probably PowerPoint.
Probably PowerPoint, yeah.
Yeah, it was and then she just added all these great pictures, and it really talks about her siblings.
Yep.
It digs into her strengths, what she likes to do, really gives a great introduction. And one of the reasons that these things are important to do, it goes to the inclusion factor, right? Some of our kids have seen disabilities and some of them have unseen disabilities. And it really helps to go, hey, this is a kid just like anybody else, right? Kid first, disability second, right?
Yep.
Like, we talk about all of these transitions through kindergarten, and we've got to always, always remember this is a kindergarten kid, right? This is what we do. So that's part of behind the portfolio or the one-page introduction. You're really talking about your child all the time. Strengths first, what my kid does just like any other kid, right? And then what are some of the supports that he needs, right? What are the needs that he has? Those motivating factors, I tell you what, I think as coming from the teacher side of that, I love to know what motivates a kid. I will bend over backwards. If Pete the Cat is going to get me 4 math questions done,
Pete the Cat,
I will draw Pete the Cat every single time, right?
Yep.
Pete the Cat added 5 plus 4. Like,
yes.
What motivates your child is how we get them to do tasks that are maybe difficult for them or maybe unpreferred. So we can switch back. I love Mia's stuff.
Yes. I like how Mia's mom put in here that my mom reminds me to hold the paper with the helping hand. I think that's really important. If there's certain language that you use with your child, not just for the helping hand for cutting, but for anything, share that with the school team. And if the school team is doing something and they're using a certain language phrase, have them share that with you. That way there's consistency. Kiefer would get super frustrated when his mom, unbeknownst to her, was trying to help him with schoolwork, and I wasn't saying the words that he was used to hearing from his teacher. And I couldn't understand why he was doing certain things at school without issue at all. But when I was trying to work with him at home, it was a struggle. So if there are things that you use consistently or the school does, just share that with each other. That way the language is consistent. All right, let me switch back. Okay, here we go. So fancy. I love it.
I love it.
All right, there we go.
Oh, this is our favorite part, supporting inclusion and why it matters. I used to joke, right? I go about it all the time. No, we can talk about special education, but there is no autism support job out there after school. There is no special education Walmart for your guys to go to. The more our children are included, the data produced is, the better outcomes they have. Remember when we did the Slido thing and all those things about friendship came up? Friendship. There was a longitudinal study done about what you can do to live the longest, right? So they did this huge study. They followed people around for like 80 plus years or something. And it wasn't, so, anybody that is not a fan of dieting, it wasn't diet, it wasn't exercise, it wasn't a great job. It was the friends and community you had is what got you to live the longest. So one of the things about supporting inclusion is creating the community for your child, to support those friendships, to support goals, oftentimes supporting, challenging goals for your child, right? So challenged with some of the work that's in your kindergarten class, or, when you get to high school, your high school class. So inclusion really means that a person with a disability has the same rights and access and choices to what everyone else in the community has to, right? It's a universal human right. Okay, next one. Little bit on the concept of inclusion. This changes a little bit year after year. But one of the things we look at, one of the things I like to point out is we know kind of the first one, what exclusion looks like. We know about segregation, where all of our kids are in their own little pod or classroom. The one that happens most often, right, is the integration ones, right? So I always like to point out that this is not inclusion. And I'm going to tell you 100% of the time that inclusion isn't always easy, but it's always worth it. Okay. So, and we don't always get it right the first time around. I could say that. So, one of the things that we look at when we talk about this is, even though inclusion isn't in the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, they refer to it as least restrictive environments, your child's least restrictive environment. And I know there are families out there that prefer the segregation section. And I always say that, if in your heart that is your child's least restrictive environment, where do you put inclusion, right? Is it in a community setting? Is it at the Y? Where do you put it? But inclusion's important. It's okay if we don't get it right the first time. We will keep trying, because, again, it is worth it. But often I see this integration part where they're in the classroom, but their little pod is, back in the back corner of the room, right? Or they're working on something completely different than whatever their class is working on. The inclusion model is your child is in the general education classroom with all of the supports and services needed. And we have, here in Pennsylvania, we have something called the Framework for Access and Belonging. And we will make sure you have a link to that. It is about what supports and services your child needs to access general education curriculum with all the kids. I can give you a little taste of what that looks like for my kiddo, who is a 100% visual learner. He did not read until much, much later in his school career, but he loves current events. Like, so many of you are, lucky enough to know my kid and have him on social media. He will champion any cause out there. So, we just had Martin Luther King Day. We had a bunch of information on Martin Luther King come out on his social media pages and pictures and all kinds of things. But so So history was really important. Social studies was really important. He really, really enjoyed that. And we had, we were doing American history, and we had a teacher that wasn't quite on board yet. And I always say it's never no, it's just not yes yet. Okay? Never no, not yes yet. So he just was a not yes yet person. And I said, well, I can, load up things onto his iPad and he can kind of follow along with whatever video that connects with the lecture, because he was a lecturer. And with whatever lecture that you're doing, I can find a video that will create that, and then we can make the test accommodations from the video, right? Has the same material. You can look over that. I did a lot of work, right? I did a lot of work. I was at the school so often one year that they thought I worked there, and they would say kinds of things, and I was like, I shouldn't have heard that. But so we did that, and then one time I sent him, the teacher, I would always send him what videos I was going to play that I was going to load onto the iPad, right? So I would send him those ahead of time. And sometimes he's like, oh, that's a good one. Oh, and I get some feedback. And I sent one, and he goes, oh, that's really good. Can I show that to the whole class? And I said, bingo, right? So from then on out, they would share the videos. Jacob didn't need to use his iPad to watch the video because they played it on the big screen or smart board or whatever it was. And the teacher in our next IEP meeting said, and he said, I have to own up. And I thought, boy, this is really hard for him. And he said, the first time I showed the video that you had using for Jacob, the kids they did like 75% to 80% better on the chapter test than they did when we didn't use those supports that we were utilizing for my child. So it just goes to show you that the supports that you can use for your child with a disability is not going to take away from whatever the children are learning in the classroom. Oftentimes, we don't identify children needing a different learning style, right? And so when our kids roll in there and they need a different learning style, it works for all the other kids that have a very similar learning style. So again, inclusion is sometimes works, but it's always worth it. This framework for access belonging is a key factor in getting good supports if you're struggling with that inclusion piece. Okay, we can go to the next one. I probably talked about this. I really do have a PowerPoint to keep me from going down the rabbit hole when I start talking about this, but least restrictive environment, it's the law, right? That is what the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act says. Child must be educated in their least restrictive environment. Schools should mirror our communities. We can go back to there's no autism support Walmart or special education Walmart for your child to work at or go to. Inclusive education, again, benefits all. What will work for a child with a disability will work with all children. We often joke about that picture of and it's so apropos as it's going to snow, where we're shoveling off the steps but not the ramp. And if you shoveled the ramp, everybody would be able to get in. It's that inclusive education benefits all students. Another caveat, and I know we're talking about transition to kindergarten, and this is always I often tell families that as a parent of a child with a disability or a caregiver to a child with a disability, you have a 5-year plan, yeah, albeit maybe a 10-year plan. At school, their individual education plans run year to year. So there's a little bit of a disconnect. And when we go back to that child portfolio or that one pager, when you talk about a vision for your child, right? It's our job as parents to show the school the vision. This is what we're looking for. This is why I fight so hard right? Because this is what I envision for my child. Next slide. The maximum extent appropriate. School districts must educate students with disabilities in regular classrooms with appropriate aids and supports. When we talk about supplemental aids and services, what does that child need to access his learning? I always call these the ramps to education, right? What do we need? What do we need? Do we need an audio book? Do we need bigger letters? Do we need different paper? You know, do we need visual, right? Do we need to pair our reading material with an audio or a video? What do we need? How do we access to the maximum extent appropriate? Every IEP team should first ask the question, how can this student special education supports and services be provided in the general education classroom? It actually talks about that on your child's individual education plan. How do we? How can we? Right? Next one. Special education is not a place, right? So just because your child needs special education support does not mean your child needs to be in a specialized classroom or school, right? If they are supports, not a classroom, not a place. It is a service for children, right? Rather than where they're being sent. So what services do we need in our general education classroom? Nope. And this is how we do it, right? We talk about SMART goals. There is all kinds of trainings on developing goals for your child's IEP. This goes back to your parent education piece, your informed decision making piece. Trainings like these, Achieva has other trainings, PEAL has other trainings. We have an online advocacy academy that runs you through the steps of an IEP. It's over on our website. You can look at our website and find it. If you can't, you can email me. That'll be at the end of the thing. But this is how we get inclusion done, right? The goal is specific and naming the skill or subject area and the targeted result, right? It's got to be measurable. We've got to be able to measure how a child's going to be able to do it. And typically the goal, when you look at the goals, they should be, remember going back to that yearly, right? They should be attainable within the year. It shouldn't be a goal that, say your child's baseline for letters is, it's got 2 letters. 26 at the end of the year may be lofty, right? I love a good short-term goal. And I know that we can get into the semantics of not doing short-term goals unless your child has an intellectual disability. But as a teacher, having short-term goals is always helpful for me because then I know how I'm teaching that child. Result-oriented, right? It lays out what the child is going to accomplish. And then it also has the performance criteria, like how many times your child's going to do that. One of the things that I talk about and we see a lot of is always surrounds behavior. And I point this out in a joking manner, but I see it a lot is, Johnny won't hit. Okay. Nobody wants Johnny to hit, right? What we need, we're looking for a goal, right? We're looking for a skill. So what are we going to teach Johnny, right? Not to not hit. Johnny's hitting for a purpose. Remember, behavior is communication. So, Johnny's hitting because he wants to play with this toy, right? So we need Johnny to be able to ask to play, or we need Johnny to be able to point to something he wants to play with, right? If Johnny's knocking over blocks, does Johnny want to play with kids? Does Johnny want to play with those blocks? What is the skill we need to teach him? Is how to ask, how to play, when you're told no, how to be frustrated without hitting, right? So a skill, right? And so that's where it's kind of these SMART goals come in is They should always be teaching your child a skill. Okay. And compliance isn't a skill. So
Jane, can I share one thing too?
yeah.
I see a lot where IEP goals are for academics or related services, sometimes behavior, if that's coming into play. But IEP goals can be for whatever a student needs to work on. So Kiefer had a social skills goal in his IEP for the longest time. We have not needed that since about 7th grade because he is a showman, for lack of a better word. And but it can be for academic goals. It could be for related services, speech, OT, PT, all of those. But it could also be for social skills. It can be for self-advocacy. Self-advocacy starts when kids go to, when kids are little. That's not a skill that we start at 18. Asking for help is a self-advocacy skill. So I just wanted to, sometimes I only see academic and I only see related services, but if there are other areas that need to be worked on, those can be included too.
And that falls under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. It does state that, that social and emotional goals are part of the child's individual education plan. And extracurricular activities too, don't forget those. So we might not see those in kindergarten, but later on you will. Okay, next one. So this is when we talk about our supplementary aid supports in at least restrictive environment. Always start, 100%, like 0% of the time with non-disabled peers in general education, and you're moving up, right? So when we talk about least restrictive environment, the overarching beginning part is general education. And then we throw the supports and services in that general education. And if that ends up not being your child's least restrictive environment, then we move it down a fraction, right? Where do we need some of that maybe intensive support, or we're looking at a different curriculum or something like that, right? But we should always start in general education. In the mind, that's where we're going to start. So as an IEP team, when you go through your child, so you get your evaluation, you develop the IEP, you put in the supports and services. Is this the least restrictive environment for your child? It is an IEP team decision. You're really, really talking about, have we built this IEP to the maximum benefit in general education? Next. I didn't realize I had,
you animated it.
Animated that. Gosh, that was a while ago again. So, again, you hear a lot about supplementary aids and services, right? So, they're whatever supports your child needs to access general education, right? To access school. And again, we can go back to, all of our children with disabilities look different, right? So, some seen, some unseen, some may need a ramp, some need glasses, some need special seating, right? It's always, I always say, when working with a school or working with a school district, about if my child would need, maybe he needed a special seat. He needed a seat that moved. Honestly, I need a seat that moves. So why not my kid? And it was really hard for them sometimes to look at that. And I said, or they had it and they were like, well, he's doing well. We'll put him back in the desk. I said, treat it like you would treat a ramp. You're not going to move the ramp just because the child using a wheelchair is inside, right? If it is working for my child and supporting my child, leave the seat. Leave it until he tells you he doesn't need it, right? And I always say that. Some way, shape, or form, he will tell you when he doesn't need it. And that kind of goes back to one of the related services my son had was he had an aide, and they just left it in his IEP. And when we started getting into middle school, actually, it had kind of faded out. But in high school, he comes home. It's like day 2 or 3. He's like, "Mom, I have a stalker." And I went, "A stalker?" He goes, "Yeah, there's this person. They're following me around." And here it was the aide. And so what did that do? That told me, right, that he didn't need the aide. In the end, I didn't, there were times that his executive functioning is so off. They were afraid he was going to just get lost from floor to floor. But he at that point was like, that was his way of saying, I really don't need this. Like, no one needs a stalker in their life. And that is the whole fade plan, right? But we only fade when our children are successful and comfortable, right? That's how he told me he was comfortable, right? Or actually, he told me he was uncomfortable with somebody following him around, which made me go, he's comfortable with something. But, because it's working does not mean you have to fade it out, right? And you'll see a lot of that. Sometimes we'll be like, "Oh, let's fade that." No, let's not. That's his ramp. That's what works for him. So one of the things that is so super important is how your child will effectively communicate needs. Okay. This is what I see when we start talking about inclusion, and sometimes the struggle we have with including children that may not communicate the same way, right? So if we have somebody nonverbal, and oftentimes, well, it's not so much often anymore. I do see a lot of communication devices now at the preschool level. I didn't always. And I would often ask, "Hey, where is that?" "Oh, one of the biggest things, oh, we don't want him to throw it." Man, we've got good cases for that. We've got straps, we could strap it on. There's all kinds of ways, and we've got insurance. I buy an insurance on my kid's iPad to this day at 24, right? Because I know at some point we're going to drop it, break it, whatever. But the importance of communication in some way, shape, or form, whether your child is using signs, gestures, a communication device, what is your child's communication needs? That is going to support your child best. Offer strategies about how your child successfully interacts with others. You know, a lot of kids are overwhelmed with a big group of kids. So if we're going to work on some of those skills, like Johnny not hitting, let's do that in a smaller group, right? We're going to work on how Johnny's going to enter into a group of play with peers, right? That's what we're going to look at. But how? As a parent, you know how your child best interacts with others, right? You know what makes your child tick. And then as a team, we talk about the concrete steps that we can include, like across all of the day to interact with typical peers. So what are the supports that we need for our child to be included across routines? Again, my kid needed that different kind of feeding, or maybe your child needs the fidget paper on the table. Maybe in that classroom, your child needs to have a space and a beanbag in the back. Everybody will like that, right? Not just your child, right? That beanbag gets a lot of play in the back of a classroom. But provide help. Part of our job as parents is to provide some concrete steps. What works for our kid, right? And again, going back to Melissa's language, the language school uses, the language we use, if that is something that's going to help support my child with typical peers, we need to share it. Next one. here's what I talk about supplemental aids and services. This is the framework for access and belonging. It used to be called, for some of my professionals, supplemental aids and services toolkit. This is what replaced it because the Department of Ed used SAS in a different space. And so SAS what could mean where the learning standards were housed on the SAS website or supplemental aids and services toolkit. So we revamped and went to framework for access and belonging. And you can read about it. There's a lot of information on the Patan website, the PA Training and Technical Assistance Network. The link is also in the resources. So Melissa, we can pull that out. Oh, she got it right there. I would say if your team is struggling with how to include your student, I would request that we do a framework for access and belonging. And there is a person typically trained at your intermediate unit to facilitate this process. And it's usually a couple of, it doesn't just happen one day. Like the teachers get things to evaluate what their classroom looks like. And then as a whole, the team comes back together to talk about what these supplementary aids and services are looking at that teacher's particular classroom, right? It looks at some of the barriers, like what style of teaching the teacher uses. Like, if we would have done this and saw that teacher uses a lecture style, we would have known going in the support that we needed to do. Like we would have gone in knowing what supplemental aids and services do. So if you're struggling to wrap your head around the inclusion piece, this is a great place to start. Next one. Oh, and family involvement matters, right? This is I talk about this. You remember, I'm a mom of 4, and my child with the most complex disability, because normal is a drier setting. Just keep that in mind. So what's normal for our family is not always normal for everybody else's family. But he is the youngest out of the 3 boys. So our oldest is a daughter. He is the youngest of 3 boys. And his older brothers included him in everything, and maybe some not so nice things. They still call him Amy because he once said that while they were playing miniature golf somewhere that he said that he was angry because somebody got a hole in one and he didn't. And they said, did you say Amy? Is your name Amy? And it's been an ongoing joke. I mean, it happened like 10 years ago. And you remember when those cans of Coke came out and they had the names on them? Yeah, they would buy him one. It would say Amy. So, that's where inclusion happens first, is at home. And I'm not talking about picking on him, but like bullying wasn't a problem for my kid because, obviously his brothers had taught him well on, how to ignore that stuff. So, but that's where it starts. So it is our ultimate goal, right, to get our schools and communities to mimic what we have in our home, right? The inclusion that we have in our home. The more that you are involved as a parent, the better your child's education is. We can champion teachers, but they cannot do it alone, right? So, listen to your kid. Make sure we get the whole story, right? But work together with the school to the best of your ability, right? To support your child's education. I don't mean you have to agree, right? Again, we can go back to the yes and not yes yet columns that I talk about often. But the stronger our teams are for our children, the better their education will be. Next one. families lead the way, right? Again, this goes back to our school's 1-year plan and our 5 to 10-year plan. We're always the constant in the child's life, right? So our teachers change, our service providers change, our families, our family systems stay the same, our supports stay the same. Families always are looking to the future. That goes to that vision statement for your child, how to get that vision across for your schools. There's lots of trainings and things about vision for your child. The life course would be one great place to start. And then being part of partners in education, right? The school does not know it all, right? They don't always know what makes your child tick. They don't always know what's causing the frustration or the problem. You are a integral part of that team. But if you sit back and just let it happen, then it will just happen without you, right? So, again, be informed. So under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, it talks about you as a parent being an informed decision maker. Trainings like these, reading books. Sometimes I would find a great article. I'd send it to my teacher. Look what this article I found, maybe this could help. I mean, the worst thing to do is not open it up or not read it, but at least I did my job as a parent. Said, hey, here's this. I found this. But as a parent, we are consistently need to be learning, right? Or again, we could go back to you don't have to know it all. You just got to know where to get some help. But where you start at kindergarten with your child, or where you started at preschool, or where you started at your infant and toddler stage, if you think back about what you know now, as opposed to when you started, just think about as the time you get through school, you've built upon the knowledge that you've gotten. So, we don't all know it at kindergarten. I would have done so many things differently. But, he made it. He's an adult. Like, he has a job. He's an artist. He does his thing. He doesn't want to drive. We've talked about it. No driving. But, it's about our family. So if we're involved in if our child's education, then they do better. They do better. They also tend to get in less trouble, just so you know. Like if your school knows you, they'll tend to call you first before your kid gets in trouble too. And I see that a lot. So, doesn't have to be the best relationship with the school, but be involved. Next one. And this we talked about. We've talked about so much about early intervention and goals and school districts and, support needs and about fighting the school. Don't forget to enjoy the moment, though. Remember, you got a kindergartner first, right? Throughout the whole transition process, enjoy the moment. Don't forget the new backpack, the shoes, the back to school nights. They're the same as any other kid. So enjoy the moment. My kid loved a new backpack. I got to say, we've got a collection. We still like a good backpack.
It's a tradition.
It is. It is a tradition.
Yeah.
But don't forget to enjoy the moment, right? It's not all about, our whatever supports or services or, disagreements or, whatever goes on in an IEP meeting. It is, we have to remember as families to enjoy the moment of, beginning our kids are, beginning kindergarten. And you don't have to tell anybody that you followed the bus to school the first day.
Are you telling on me? Because I feel like you're telling on me.
Yeah, telling on you, telling on me. Anyway, okay, next slide. I think we got a few more. So these are a bunch of resources. Yes, that some of these are obviously just geared towards kindergarten kids, because your kids are going to be kindergartners, right? So nothing, nothing special education about it, right? It is kindergarten, here I come, right? For preschoolers. And then when I'm a kindergarten, here I am. I made it, so these are links for activities you can do to help your kiddo get ready, or when your kiddo's in kindergarten. I listed the ECTA, which is the Early Childhood Technical Assistance Center. Has a lot of great information beyond just the transition to kindergarten. Next slide. Then I added even more resources because I love a good resource. So these are the TAM publication, so that's Pennsylvania's technical assistance through their Department of Ed, the link to the Framework for Access and Belonging, and then the Early Childhood Technical Assistance Center. It's national, has a family practice guide that talks about preschool to kindergarten. And I joke because they all come with videos, these family practice guides, and they're a little outdated, but the information is so good in them and they're so easy to read. And I think So again, just like Achieva, we're available. You can go to our website. There's an online link. You can and then we'll get back to you. You can skip over to the next one too. I would love it if you take time to fill out the evaluation. We are federally funded, and all of our services through PEAL are free for families. So they always ask for numbers, and this is how I give them to them. So if you take time to fill out that evaluation, that would be great.
And I'll send out the slides too, if that's okay with you.
Yes, that would be. I was just thinking that would be the best way to go about that. That way, everybody has the resources available, and the evaluation available. And I'll probably I can always follow up too if need be. But yeah, you can move on. Any questions?
I know that was a lot.
It was a lot of information. I always say that all the time.
We packed a lot in. So.
I try to, and then I always say, if you have any questions, call me.
Yes.
Right? Call me.
Because it would probably take me several days to process everything, think about it, and then I might have a question. So
yes,
if that's you too, that is completely fine. Whether your question pops up now, or thank you for putting your email in the chat, Jane, or if it pops up in a week from now, or if it pops up in 3 months from now. Like, one of the things that I hope you all take away from this evening is that you don't have to do this alone. There are people to support you. You can call Jane, you can call me, you can call advocacy teams, you can call, if you go to the patent website, there's a ton of information on there too. So, and another thing that I just wanted to mention quickly is that even though you're transitioning to kindergarten, the IU in each county is still there to support school teams and students. We've used IU services for my son a few times for different things, but there are people. So phone a friend, send an email, whatever you need to do to connect. But I love that everyone was here tonight, because this stuff like this didn't really exist 10 years ago when Kiefer was getting ready to go to kindergarten, and I felt really alone, and like nobody knew how I was feeling or what I was going through as a parent. But just seeing you guys all here tonight reminds me that we're never in these things alone. So phone a friend, but also remember, there are no wrong decisions. There's never a wrong decision. I see Ryan, you raised your hand. Go ahead.
So this isn't Ryan, this is his wife, Jen.
Oh, I'm sorry. It cut off the and part. I couldn't see the and part right away.
You're totally fine. There's no and there. So, but I was just wondering, are these slides and these resources going to be available to tap into at a later time?
Absolutely. I'm going to email them to everybody. Probably well, tomorrow, if all goes according to plan, if not next week, I will email out the slides, but also this is recorded and I'll share out the video once it's edited too, because it will upload it onto our YouTube site.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Of course.
We have a question over here in the chat. It talks about incontinent and are toileting issues ever a reason for someone to recommend a more restrictive placement? Absolutely not. That's actually one of the easiest things to conquer, right? Like,
absolutely.
As an IEP team, he can talk about visiting the nurse. If the nurse isn't available, is an aide available? You know, where's he? But you want to think about, remember, like we talked about each step, right? Like, so, you know, so is it going to be the nurse, or who's it going to be if the nurse isn't available? Where's that change need to happen? Right. So typically they have changing tables in most of the nurses' rooms now. What else do we need? Right. So your concrete steps, what is he like? So if he's worried about going to the bathroom, right? Like we can work on some of those skills too. Cause my kiddo, he probably wore pull-ups probably until first or second grade, just because he was a withholder. He would tell you that too. So like, if you need to understand any bathroom issues, my son is not afraid to talk about them.
Yeah.
We've got a little too much information from him, but there's always a supporter service for that. That is no reason to, and you'll hear that, oh, we don't have a changing table in our bathroom in kindergarten. Well, just find out where it is and find out who's going to do it.
Yep. And Maria, I was down that road, different incontinence issues, but then also some fearfulness of some restrooms. So if you want to talk more about that, I'd be happy to. But yeah, we've been down the road, as they say. And he's primarily included even through middle school. So we could talk about that more for sure.
Yeah. And we got Jen's question, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. We're going to email the slides, so we're good there. All right.
Anybody else? Did good.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for spending your evening with us. Thank you, Jane, for spending your evening doing this. It's so appreciated. Oh, Jen, go ahead.
Yes,
this is Amy. Okay.
How often do you recommend meeting with the school after you have those meetings, like quarterly, like whatever the need is? Like, what's the best kind of course of action with that?
I would always say whatever the need is. So I think you kind of get into a rhythm with your IEP. So the school, to be in compliance with the state law, they have to have one once a year. So it's the annual IEP meeting. That's about school compliance, right? So, but as a parent, you can request one at any time. Mm-hmm. I typically we have 2 a year, right? One at the beginning of the year, one at the end of the year. One of them fell as an annual IEP meeting. Mm-hmm. But I like to know going in, are the things in his IEP working? Is there anything that we need to change? Is there stuff that we need to work on as a group? And that at the end, what worked, what didn't work, what's the next year's transition look like? So one on either side. But then, like, if you have a big change or, there's some kind of fluctuation or you see something decline in his work, you can first reach out to your child's teacher, but you can convene that meeting at any time. Like, say, you noticed struggling with handwriting or something. They don't always catch that in kindergarten. You can always call an IEP team meeting and say, hey, I see there's some struggles with this. Or if that teacher's called you like 3 or 4 times to talk about kind of the same thing, it's probably time for an IEP meeting. They may not realize that, but you as a parent can ask for that.
Absolutely. Oh, Jamie, you're next.
Jamie's got a double hands up.
I see that. I don't know. Jamie, you're muted if we can't. There you go.
No, that was just a mistake. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Good stuff.
Yep.
Fantastic. No
I do
problem.
that all the time. The hand
I do
raising
too.
thing is so hard for me.
I do too. I put it up and then I don't know how to put it down. I can do it on Google because I'm on Google all the time, but anything else, like, forget about it.
Yeah.
But yes, thank you all for being here. Thank you, Jane, for presenting. I know it's a journey for sure. It's one that you'll always remember. I know that I still do. But it's gonna be good.
Yeah.
It's gonna be good, and it's all gonna get figured out. And
Go buy those backpacks.
Go buy the backpacks, buy the shoes. Don't forget to go to the back to school night and eat the icy or whatever your school is doing. But make your own little family traditions. And yes, reach out for support anytime. We're always here.